bucks on the roof. Mr. Fraser was the first selectman then. And I go to all these meetings, like, I recommend some ideas, but they say, Randall, you don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I sure do know what I'm talking about. I recommended, instead of tearing that school building down, which we could have used for other things, let's join the two buildings we got up there together, put a new building in the center, and we'd have a lot of room for different things. No, we tore that good building down that maybe we could have spent a couple $100,000 and renovated it. So I'm going to tell you here, today's the 19th, when this outfit comes back, you know what they're going to tell us to do? To build a new school. It's probably going to cost us another 40, 50 million bucks to build a new school. They'll tear down these buildings instead of fixing them. I think Waterford just did theirs, cost them 56 million to do them all. And then they built a couple of new schools, I guess. But we're going to have a new school building because we got people moving into town pretty soon up there where they're putting all those houses up in back of the golf course. So we're going to have a new school anyway. But I went to that school up here, the elementary school. And my wife's from Germany. Her whole family went to the school. She went to the school. It's over 100 years old. It's still working and still standing. We build a building and we tear it down. We got a lot of money in this town. We can spend it and waste it. So I'm against this 100%, to spend and waste this money on these people that want to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rando. Would anyone else like to be heard? Mr. Taylor.
Alan Taylor, 36 River Road. Usually when you speak on a subject with education, you're immediately labeled as anti-education and such, and I've had that label given to me every year when I was on the Board of Finance, when I questioned the budget for the Board of Ed. Having 3 kids that went through the system and have all done well, it's not education I'm against, it's when money is spent unwisely. And I'd like to bring up something that maybe some of you will remember. We had a proposal made in this town by a prior selectman to put in a $24 million police station. And it was built or designed by an architect. There were a great many rumors, comments made around town that perhaps the architect might be helping to fund the positive passage of that in our town. I can't prove whether that was the case or not, but there was certainly a lot of discussion on that. And you might say, well, why would he want to do a thing like that? It's hard to, because it's mounted and I'd have to scooch, but we'll try. You might wonder why they would do that, or why an architect might if he did. The problem here is that the contract, that would be better. Thank you. My back. The contract for that one stated that the architect would be given the contract if it went through, and he would also be given the right to supervise its construction and would receive approximately 10% of the construction cost for overseeing that, which was at $24 million. He would have received $2.4 million in additional fees for supervising it. This is pretty common for architects to try to do. Now, I understand that the possibility exists in this contract that has been given here, that it says that the architect asks that he be considered, if he puts this forward, that he be considered for the plans, and that he also be allowed to supervise its construction. If it's $40 million and he gets 10%, he'll get another $4 million. At 8%, which might be what he might get also, it'd be $3.2 million. This is not wise spending of money. It's spending and giving away something before you've even made a decision. And if that's in that contract, which I understand may be in it, then we shouldn't be going forward with this. And secondly, I'd like to point out that of this money, 28,000 of it is from Project Learn, which should have been in the budget as a revenue. So they're taking 28,000, which was supposed to be a revenue to the town, part of the town's budget, and saying, well, we're not going to give it to you, we're going to use that as also part of the $80,000. So you're really voting tonight, not on 54, but on 80,000, because you're losing 28 in revenue and you're picking up a new expense of 54. I'm against this contract as it's written. I understand that it came down here to the Board of Selectmen, and the first night they saw it was the night that they were being allowed to vote on it. Sounds like the House of Representatives and the Senate in Washington, D.C. They're voting on things they haven't even seen. In this case, they got it, but they couldn't go through it at all. I think that there needs to be some review of this and put this vote off. I don't think it's a wise move at this stage, and I suggest that somebody review it and see that we're not signing away some significant expenses in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Dr. Motter?
Jim Lombardo, Superintendent of Schools, 4 Maple Street, Nyack Center, Nyack, Connecticut. I would like to just correct a couple of misunderstandings about this proposal. First of all, the $54,000 is already in our fund that we have collected over the last several years from Learn for renting a portion of the Haynes Elementary School. So 100% of the $54,000 is coming from funds that already exist in a reserve account that the town has. Secondly, the contract with the architect that this is going toward is for phases 1 and 2 of the project, which means basically to get this to a referendum. If there is a positive referendum at the end of that, then we will negotiate a new contract, and the Board of Education has the right to go out to bid for the remaining part of the contract, which is the actual construction documents and the follow-through that occurs with an architectural firm that is certainly required by the state of Connecticut in any project of this scope. So this project, as it sits right now, and these funds will go for the first 2 phases of the development of a plan to bring to the community. Beyond that, it would still require another contract that would have to be negotiated after that point. And I can tell you that the percentages that Mr. Taylor is quoting have not been proposed in any way by any of the bidders on this project. In fact, the maximum amount of percentage in phase 3, which would be the construction phase that isn't even being considered tonight, would be 7%, and that's still to be negotiated. Okay.
Thank you, Dr. Motter.
Yep.
Mr. Rando? You want to speak? Okay. Let Mr. Rando speak into that.
You need my name again, Weston?
Yes, just for the record, Mr. Rando, we don't need your address again.
Ron Rando? Now, if I understand this right, where is this 54,000? Is this in the Board of Education's budget? How is it in there? Is it in there as, what do they call it when they put it in there? I mean, is it in a special slush fund or what? I mean, we had a slush fund at the elementary school there a few years ago. There seemed to be nobody knew about it, but where is this 54,000? Does it show up in their budget anywhere?
Do you want someone to answer that question, Mr. Rando?
What's that,
Do you
sir?
want someone to answer that
Yes,
question?
I would.
Would anyone like to answer Mr. Rando's question? Mr. First Selectman? Ms. Johnson?
Anna Johnson, Finance Director, and for the record, I am not eligible to vote. The Learn funds are put into a capital and non-reoccurring fund designated for the use by the Board of Education.
Used for anything? Or special projects, or?
In order to have access to the funds, the Board of Education needs to make a request to the Board of Selectmen, and then it needs to be approved by the Board of Finance and come to a town meeting for ultimate approval.
So anything over 10,000, right?
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Thank you, Mr. Rando. Mr. Taylor, you wanted to make another comment?
I just wanted to clarify something, if I could. I still think 7% of 40 or $50 million is an awful lot of money, but the point that bothered me a little bit was said that there was $28,000 or $54,000 of Project Learn money already. Does this mean that the rental income that they get out of the schools does not come to the town, does not go to the general fund, and there's no voting on how that money is spent? That was part of the problem that we had with the $250,000 that was down at the elementary school. So I'm a little concerned when the superintendent suggested, well, we already have the money and we can spend it. Is that part of the general fund that needs to be voted on? And the $28,000 that's coming from Project Learn, that's also part of this? Is that already allowed to be spent without any vote by the town and such on it? So in my opinion, we're voting on the whole $80,000 on an approval, not that they have the money to go ahead and spend it. It's voting here is what I believe.
Mr. First Selectman, you'd like to answer that
Yeah,
question?
Mr. Taylor, the $54,800 was money that was collected from the Learn rent and put into the account, as the finance director has indicated. That is past rent that has been accumulated in that fund. I believe there's a few $100,000 in that fund as it accumulates.
It's a town account, not a board of.
It is a town account, as Ms. Johnson said. In order for any of that funding to be used, it has to go through this process. Selectmen, finance, and now here. The remainder, which I think it says 36 on this, but is 28,000, was put in the budget request for next year from the Board of Education as a line item under new spending, I guess. So the 28,000 has not been approved and will be approved by voter turnout if they approve the Board of Education budget, and that is included in the funding. I hope that answers your question.
The only part that bothers me is that
Bless you.
Parks and Rec money goes into the general fund, and you have the right to disperse it. The money that comes from the Board of Ed, you're putting in a private account and saying only the Board of Ed can spend it after it's approved. Why doesn't it go into the general fund, and they have to come in and get a request like anybody else?
We established some years ago, I think you may have been on the Board of Finance, the capital non-reoccurring funds, which identifies, as you know, specific uses for funds as it comes in. They're earmarked for particular things, such as vehicles or parks or, in this case, education. So this money, as collected by Learn Rent, it was determined at the time that that money, because it came from a school property, was to be used for Board of Education purposes. And so therefore, it was put into a capital non-reoccurring account, which is a revenue account managed by the finance director, but for Board of Education use. Any park and rec funding that may go into a special account is used for whatever that's designated for, but that's usually determined at the budget process. So that's why we go through this voting process, Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and now the town meeting, so that people can air their concerns and questions, and these things can be answered.
I stand by my statement.
Mr. Taylor, you'll have to come up to the podium if you're.
I just wanted to say that
I can lift this up.
based on everything I heard, I still stand by my statement that I think the contract that has been submitted to the Board of Selectmen on the same night they voted should be reviewed and be a little bit more familiar before we come here for a vote. Know exactly what's in that and what commitments the town are making. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you, Mr. Pursley. Ms. Rack?
Karen Rack, 27 Black Point Road. How long has the money been accumulating in the account, the Learn account, and then does it get transferred as yearly? And I'm just kind of trying to figure out how long it's been accumulating. It said the amount was, so through you, Mr. Moderator, if someone could.
Yes, can someone answer that question?
I'm not quite sure during what year the Learn rents were established, but every year the rents are, I believe, about $57,000, and they come over 10 months during the year. And from time to time, when the Board of Education has a project that they want to recommend to the town, as I stated before, it would come through the Board of Ed to the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, and town meeting process.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
So I understand this, so through you, Mr. Moderator, not knowing how long the account has been there, the Learn account, what typically has the Learn account been used for going into the CNRE for past appropriations?
Does anyone want to answer that question? Dr. Lombardo, do you know the answer?
In the last 5 years, we have used those funds with town approval to replace the roof on Lily B. Haynes, I'm trying to think of any other projects that have been done on that. Don, do you recall?
Don Elfmark, business manager, used it for boiler replacement. We've also
Mr. Malvado, you're going to have to come up so everyone can
It
hear
was,
you.
we used it for a boiler replacement one year.
And we did the windows, replaced windows on the Lily B. Haynes School.
Can you say that in the microphone so they can hear you back
We
there?
replaced the windows on Lily B. Haynes School, as well as replacing a boiler.
Thank you.
And,
That answer your
every,
question, sir?
and none of those monies get spent without going through this process and receiving town approval after the Board of Finance approves bringing it
Thank you,
forward.
Dr. Lombardo.
Yep.
Would anyone else like to be heard on this issue? Are there any hands out there, Rob? No. Okay. Seeing no hands, then we will move the question. All those in favor of a special appropriation of $54,800 from the CNRE Fund 32 into an account entitled Architect, East Lyme Elementary Schools, to develop educational specifications and cost estimates for upgrading the elementary school buildings, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed by saying nay.
Nay.
I heard Mr. Draven. The resolution carries. The next item on the agenda is a special appropriation in the amount of $43,500 DOT 2014 Comprehensive DUI Enforcement Program to account 0125216011 grant overtime. Do I hear a resolution? Ms. Hardy, is there a second? Second. You get that? Okay. Is there any discussion? Mr. First Selectman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. This has been an annual request over the last few years from the town of East Lyme Police Department. This particular year, they've applied for $43,500 in federal funds for the 2014 Department of Transportation Comprehensive DUI Enforcement Program. This grant money is allotted for funding East Lyme police officers and the resident state trooper to conduct high-visibility DUI enforcement. The grant is funded at 75% by the Department of Transportation, with a contribution from the town of East Lyme at 25%, and will allow officers to be on patrol during weekend nights and holidays. The objective of this grant is to reduce the number of crashes, injuries, and fatalities from impaired drivers through increased high-visibility DUI enforcement activities. Enforcement techniques employed will include DUI patrol activities as well as periodic DUI sobriety checkpoints. The funding will allow for 129 DUI enforcement shifts, which would be in addition to the minimum staffing levels of the East Lyme Police. And it's also my understanding that of the $14,500, we get approximately $8,000 to $10,000 back in revenue received from infractions that are written as our portion of the payments to the state for that.
Mr. First Selectman, you said 14,000, do you mean 43,500?
43,500 plus 14,500 for a total of 58,000. I'm sorry if I misspoke.
Would anyone else like to be heard? Seeing no hands? Anyone out there? Mr. Dravitt.
Yeah, I don't like drunk drivers any more than the next guy. Now, will this money be used, by the sound of it, it's only gonna go for overtime, or is it straight time?
I believe it's mostly overtime. There could be some straight time shifts, but it's mostly overtime.
Well, I hope they concentrate it all over town. Through Flanders is a mess. A lot of places serving alcohol up there now. 161 is almost a drag race in the summer between all the folks coming out of the taverns on Main Street in Waterford with the Harleys and all. Not that I mind Harleys, but it's horrible in the summer. Anyway, I might vote yes on this. I'm not sure yet.
You better stay in this room, Mr. Dravitt, so we can hear that. Is there any other discussion? Seeing no hands. All those in favor of a special appropriation in the amount of $43,500 DOT 2014 Comprehensive DUI Enforcement Program to account 0125-216-100-519 grant overtime. Please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed by saying nay. The resolution carries. The next item on the agenda is a special appropriation of up to $4,442,779 from proceeds related to legal settlement, insurance settlement, and FEMA funds from the Capital Project Funds 57 into an account entitled Nyack Bay Boardwalk 2014 to fund betterment and repairs. Remaining funds to be used to maintain for maintenance and upkeep. Is there a motion? Yes, sir. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Mr. Rando. Mr. First Selectman?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I know that not many people here are interested in this tonight, so I'll go quickly. I'm going to ask Bill Scheer here to help me. Bill is the Deputy Director of Public Works and the Town Engineer. And I just want to go back and give a little bit of history to kind of catch us up where we are to this point. And then we'll be happy to answer any questions or take your comments on this particular issue. You know, the history of this boardwalk goes back to the early 2000s when it was built, a 1.1 mile stretch along the Long Island Sound from the hole in the wall to the Amtrak Bridge. It was built to withstand a 25-year storm, and soon after it was built, a 2 or 3 year storm event did considerable damage. And part of the reason that it did so was because the gravel packed top on there certainly would not withstand any of the weather adjacent to a strong water source like that. There have been a number of fundings over the years to maintain this, and we kind of kept it in working shape until the stimulus program came, and it was determined by Amtrak to rebuild replace the over the river railroad bridge with a new structure that had to be built 58 feet to the south. In order to accommodate that 58 feet to the south move for the new bridge, the track had to be modified, therefore causing the demolition and the removal of the boardwalk on the easterly half, or approximately a half a mile of the boardwalk. But the contract that we had with Amtrak, should that ever occur, was that they were to build that boardwalk equal to or better than. In conjunction with our town engineers, a representative from DEP, we sent a team down to Philadelphia during the design and construction process of the Amtrak project, and they helped design the boardwalk that you see today, the half boardwalk that is integrated into the track design and is made of concrete with concrete panels that are 8 feet by 30 feet that are driven into the sand, backfilled, covered with a concrete walkway. We used the railing from the old boardwalk to replace there, and the retaining wall was built there to kind of hold the track back. Railroad tracks by design have to be built to 100-year storm protection. So that boardwalk half is built to 100-year storm protection. What we have done since then is had to relook at what we were doing here. And I'll note this picture. It says pre-Irene on the bottom, which means this picture was taken as just before Irene came and did the hurricane. And I want you to pay particular attention to this railroad. I believe that's a transformer station as you go through the pictures. And you can see that the Morton House is back there. If you see, that's pre-Irene, and now Bill is going to put a picture up that shows what happened after Irene. And you note that the fine gravel has all been washed away. The curb that were along there is been washed away, that the underlayment is now exposed, and we lost about a foot there, and you can see the width has been significantly decreased. So we were able to apply for insurance settlement on that because this is an engineered public park and therefore eligible for insurance funds. And we were able to receive from the insurance company $1,511,178.31 with a deferred liability payment, should that be spent, of $201,560.43. And that's there. And you note there's the transformer, and you see the fence, the underlayment, and the rocks. Note the color of the Amtrak rock revetment. That's the Amtrak track right above there. You'll see the electrical poles there. The rust color is along the rail, and the white color you'll see down on the right side of the boardwalk there. Now we get to Sandy. Sandy came along and made much more of a mess of that same situation. You'll note that a lot of the revetment rock that used to be up here is now down here. The underlayment's in a pile, and you'll note that the fence is rolled up in a ball. And I can tell you that we always thought that that was the Amtrak fence, and they never argued with us until this thing happened, and then they said that's our fence. So, that being said, this is where we are today. This is what's happened for Sandy. Now, the difficult thing when we came to apply for an insurance settlement for this is we had to figure out from whence the damage from Irene was that we got paid for. So what is the difference between the damage Irene and the damage Sandy? So because we had flown over the area with a plane and took some pictures and we had some pretty precise measurements, we were able to settle with the insurance company for $1,151,479.17. And that money is also in a fund put aside, and that was from the insurance. You see there's the Amtrak transformer, and this is the condition of the boardwalk now. Now, we've had Congressman Courtney out here, we've had Amtrak officials out here, and we think that if nothing is done here, Amtrak is at risk because of the 90-degree almost stand-up of the revetment that is there, so another storm would have the chance of undermining the tracks. And Congressman Courtney has been a big help to us with regard to communicating with Amtrak on helping us through this. So that's where we are now. We began to design what would be the fix, and Bill is showing this is the design. You see the tracks are up here. The replacement of the revetment from Amtrak is there. There is a concrete walkway that is being designed with a cap. These are steel panels instead of concrete panels, and we learned a little bit from the Amtrak process. They were about $6 million over budget by driving in those concrete panels because of the thickness, and going down into rocky terrain, they had a lot of trouble getting in there. So we're using a heavy gauge steel panel that's going to go down there. We've already perk tested not perk tested, but
test beds.
Thank you. The area there, so we know we can put these steel panels in, and we'll drive those steel panels down, fill them, we'll put some rock revetment in the front, and we'll cap it with a concrete walkway. So when it's complete, this will also be to 100-year storm protection. So when we're done with this, we will have, from the hole-in-the-wall entrance to the Amtrak bridge, a 1.1 mile